Hello, I'm John Largent, President and CEO of Largent Media, a digital media and podcast production agency. And on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this webcast being taped in collaboration with TVSA, San Antonio's public access station. This program will be broadcast to TVSA's audience, and we're also proud to make it available through constant contact and social media to our growing learning community of professionals and volunteer nonprofit leaders nationwide, comprised of CEOs, executive directors, directors of development, other staff, board members, donors, and other friends of the magnificent nonprofit community that every day touches, improves, and saves more lives. We need to make it clear that on the onset, this is not like our regular interactive webinars that we do. And during this program, you'll not be able to or have the opportunity to answer or ask any questions during this time. One of the perks of my career has been the privilege to meet and work with an awesome array of men and women who have distinguished themselves by their accomplishments in a wide range of different fields, including entertainment, sports, business, authors, and as newsmakers and opinion shapers. Several years ago, Jim Eskin and I met and launched our partnership triggered by the pandemic to help strengthen the capacity of the nonprofit sector through webinars, podcasts, and other virtual formats. I can honestly say that I've never met anyone so passionate and committed and qualified to boost the knowledge, leadership, and capacity of professionals and volunteer nonprofit leaders. Typically, the format is Jim interviewing subject matter experts from across the country, integral to the advancement and success of nonprofits. But we've decided today we're going to flip the switch, and I am going to interview Jim and take advantage of his wealth of wisdom and experience as a practitioner, consultant, and prolific writer and author, including a monthly newsletter, hundreds of guest columns, and blogs, and by the way, 2 books now.
Right.
So I'll have the privilege of asking the questions to which Jim will respond to. So first off, Jim, let's get started from square one. Why did you launch Eskin Fundraising Training in 2018?
Well, we are celebrating our 7th anniversary, so I guess we get a sabbatical. But guess what? We're not going to take it. I had the privilege of leading 3 advancement programs of higher education institutions, and it was a wonderful experience, and I worked with fearless community and business leaders who would do anything, with one exception: ask for a gift for the causes they believed in so much. And I think, like most fear, it was based on a fear of the unknown. They really hadn't experienced a solicitation for themselves. And I don't fault them. I fault the practitioners. We did not do a good enough job of demystifying what I call the art and science of fundraising. I think they're a lot more familiar. There's 2 ways money can end up in your hand if you're a nonprofit. You can just get it, and that's when it's completely self-directed by the donor, or you can intentionally and strategically ask for it. That's a lot better, because when the donor decides everything, they completely determine the amount, the purpose, and the timing. And when the nonprofit intentionally and strategically asks for it, they can influence to a great deal the amount, the purpose, and the timing.
Well, we've got these things sitting right here on the desk. You recently released your 2nd book,
Right.
How to Score Your First or Next $1 Million Gift. How did you come up with that as a topic matter to write a book about?
Well, over the last 7 years, we have led more than 250 either live or virtual presentations. And we have had a learning community audience composed of volunteer and professional nonprofit leaders, literally from all across the country. This was the question that came up more than anything else. How do we raise major gift money and particularly the larger the better. Particularly, there's something magical sounding about $1 million. And that was the inspiration for writing this book. And the good news is it's very, very, very doable.
Yeah, and I have found it, I've read both of the books, and I've found it to be a great complement to your first book.
Thank you.
Obviously, there are going to be nonprofit professionals that are going to be watching this. And a lot of them have never achieved or received $1 million gift. What are some of the first steps that they should take if they want to make that or receive that first $1 million gift?
Well, the first reason is, when Martin Luther King challenged America to get on the right side of the history, standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in front of 250,000 people, he didn't say, I have a strategic plan. He said something else.
I have a dream.
I have a dream. And when we get down to it, nonprofit leaders start with a dream. Their dream, a vision of how they can contribute to a better world and how they can touch, improve, and save more lives, especially helping those who are struggling. And it has to be, to get $1 million gift, it has to be a very, very, very special, powerful vision. And they have to elicit a wow response. It has to excite people because their dream, they need to get people to believe in their dream, to embrace it, and with their gifts of time, talent, and money to invest in making their dreams part of a better future.
Say I've identified my dream project. What's the science behind turning that dream into a reality?
Well, here's the good news. The foundational processes for landing $1 million gift is really the same for landing $1,000 gifts. I like to refer to 4 phases. And the first phase is discovery, and that's identifying who's your probable donor. What are their values? What are their priorities? What are their needs? The second stage is cultivation, and that's forging a personal and emotional bond between the donor and the mission of your nonprofit. The third one is obvious. That's the solicitation, and that's how much are you going to ask for? What is the purpose? When is the money to be paid? Okay? And the final step is stewardship, and that's how you acknowledge the last gift. Because if we get $1 million from John Largent, we want to come back next year, and we want him to give again, and maybe even give more.
Yeah, I'd love to be in a position to give $1 million a year.
Okay, well, stock market's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, let us talk about something I skipped over. The importance of major gifts. It's fascinating. Have you heard of the 80-20 rule?
Yes.
Okay, 80-20 rule says that 80% of the outcomes will come from only 20% of the inputs, and you can apply that to anything. And it's very interesting. You know who discovered that?
No, I don't.
It was an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto, and he discovered it in
the Pareto's principle.
Right,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
That's right.
He discovered it, and guess how, in 1906. He went into his garden, and he was growing peas, and guess what? 80% of the peas came from just 20% of the pea pods. And he said, aha! And then he studied who owns the land in Italy. And guess what? 80% of the land was owned by just 20% of the landowners.
Yeah.
And that applied pretty much to American philanthropy, that 80% of the gift income was coming from just 20% of the donors until the last decade. And now that has shifted even more dramatically. Last year, we raised $557 billion. And now 90% of that $557 billion comes from just 10% of the donors.
Oh, wow. So it's moved from 80-20 to 90-10.
That's why those major gifts are essential to success.
Oh, when you were talking about that, I'd like to know, what are some of the clues that indicate you're on the right track when you're trying to grab this $1 million gift?
Well, to me, the biggest clue is that money follows time. To the extent that you can get quality meetings with the donor prospect, and they'll meet with you in a variety of ways. It could be face-to-face. It could be taking a site tour. It could be through virtual communication. But the reason they commit time to you is a very, very good signal that your cultivation is working and you're moving forward to a moment to solicit the gifts. Reversely, if they're not giving you time, that's not a good sign. And that means they're not ready, and you're going to have to come up with plan B.
Well, you mentioned one, but one of the things that always strikes me is when you look at a final goal,
Yeah.
That achievement is one thing. There are a lot of challenges associated with that. What are some of the other challenges besides the time, getting the time to speak to the right person, that you've seen and you've experienced, I'm sure, in your fundraising career?
Well, you got to remember this. It's very difficult being in the shoes of a donor. You have to make excruciatingly tough choices, not between the good and the bad, but between the good and the good. And so you have to push your nonprofit to define what statements, what claims it could make that all these other good causes can't. And you have to fill a niche in the philanthropic marketplace.
So, Jim, you talked about some of the challenges that are involved in achieving that $1 million gift. And I would think one of those things is time. So, in your mind, how long does it take? Or what's the ideal time to expect to obtain that $1 million gift?
Well, we like to say it's something nurturing a friendship, and I didn't say relationship, because a relationship I once heard defined as something you have until something better comes along, and you're looking at a friendship that goes a lot deeper and sustained over time. And it's going to be measured by how many times you interact with the donor prospect. Do you get to meet with them in person? Do they visit your nonprofit? Do they get to see how the beneficiaries, how their lives are impacted? These are all signals rather than, a week has gone by or a month's gone by, that the friendship is really growing, okay? And it's going to tell you you're in a position. Now, if you're lucky, you can achieve that maybe in 60 to 90 days. Truth is, the bigger the gift, the longer it takes to cultivate. The greatest fundraising expert of all time, Gerald Pennis, who sold more books on fundraising than all the rest of us combined, said that 85% of the challenge is getting the donor's time. These are very, very people that are in demand. It's hard to scale that wall. So one of your biggest challenges is just going to get quality interaction time with your donor prospect, particularly those who are comfortable making $1 million plus gifts.
Yeah, you brought up a really important point that people that are going to offer $1 million gifts are leaders in business. They're leaders in the community. They're typically very affluent people.
Right.
So what advice do you have nonprofit leaders that may be intimidated or think that those people that are ultimately going to give that gift don't run in the same circles, or they can't relate to those people because of their status in society and in their communities?
Well, we hear that a lot. And I like to refer to something called the 6 degrees of separation. And that reminds us that everybody on the planet everyone on the planet is separated by no more than 6 personal relationships. And in some communities, it's just 2 degrees of separation. I think San Antonio qualifies as that. And so you look within your nonprofit family of professionals and volunteers and board members, who do they know that can break the ice? Or maybe they know a connector that can get to these people that are capable of making such large gifts.
Yeah, you talked about you didn't like using the term relationships, that you like friendships.
Right.
By the same token, in the world of networking, I don't like the word networking. I like friends working, because you want to have those relationships with friends. You can. I borrowed it from a good friend of mine, so you're welcome to borrow it. I guess we've talked about so many things in more of a theoretical state. Can you share some real life examples of people that you have worked with or know that have achieved those $1 million gifts?
Well, I'm very, very proud of that. And actually, I've had $4 million plus donors in my practitioner career, and they couldn't be more different. The first one, the first $1 million gift, boy, if I remember, was December 4th, 11:15 a.m. Central Time.
Oh, you remember.
In 1998. Oh, boy, do I remember. And interestingly enough, I was working in the College of Business for the University of Texas at San Antonio, and the first $1 million gift was from a business leader who lived 8,267,000 miles away in Hong Kong. He had developed a friendship, and truly was a friendship, with my boss, who was the dean of the College of Business, which is now called the Alvarez College of Business. And he was doing philanthropy, and he happened to love Texas. He was one of the world's leading, still is, leather manufacturers. He's got a company called Superior Leather Holdings, and he started his business. He scraped up enough money, and he got a plane ticket to San Antonio, and then he went down to Yoakum, Texas, and the company that owns Radio Shack, Tandy Brands, actually had a huge leather facility there, and he made his first sale and he never forgot that. And he fell in love with the state of Texas. And he progressed to be very successful. The controller of that company went on to higher education. He taught accounting at Notre Dame, and then he became the dean of the College of Business at UTSA, and my boss, and I learned a gazillion things from him. And it's interesting enough, I probably went on 100 solicitation calls with him, and I watched the master. He did it. I mean, it could be for $5,000 or $10,000. And then it came to an opportunity that Richard Liu was the leather manufacturer, scheduled a trip for San Antonio, and we developed a proposal that was based on scholarships and faculty exchanges and research. And he said, Jim, I'm going to let you make. First time he let me make an ask. I'm going to let you make this ask because I think it's going to do more for your career than my career. I asked, he said yes, and by the way, Dean Gattner was right. It did do more for my career.
That's a mentor.
Yes,
that's willing to share that. I want to ask you, we didn't really talk about this prior to coming on, but how did you feel after that first $1 million gift? I can only imagine. So
I'll tell you how I feel.
Yeah, I would love to know that.
At 11:15 at that time, I wanted to cry and scream so loud in joy, but I restrained myself. I looked at my dean. He just winked at me. You know, play it cool. And
so you had the reaction there with Mr. Liu, but then when the cameras were off, is that when the celebration started?
Well, we had a very nice dinner, and Andrea recall. We went down to a downtown hotel, and interestingly enough, it was like the longest dinner of my life. And something I learned, I think they lost the chef. I mean, really, they couldn't get the entrees out. They kept on bringing us free drinks, free wine. And something I noticed, Americans are much more rushed than people around the world. And Mr. Liu was loving it. And he loved long conversation. It wasn't a problem to him. I'm going, where the heck is the food? And he had a great time. He had a great time.
Fantastic.
And subsequently, he's given $5 million to that institution.
So not only did you get that initial gift, but he continued
Correct.
to give on a recurring basis.
Right. And the major auditorium is named after him. And he, for a long time, was the largest donor ever to the University of Texas at San Antonio. And again, it's interesting, the larger donor is 8,267 miles away. And that reminds us that literally gifts can come from anywhere,
Yeah.
particularly in this global environment we're in now.
If you don't mind indulging, can you share another story? I mean, that was just an amazing
Yeah.
story. You have another story that you could share
Yeah,
with us?
and again, the difference there, I was managing his friendship with the donor. The next example, I moved on to become Vice President of Advancement at Our Lady of Lake University, which is a small Catholic institution in San Antonio. And there was a retired Army colonel surgeon who was very, very accomplished in her field named Dr. Janice Mendelsohn. And everybody told me she's eccentric. And I bought into it. She would show up to meetings with plastic shopping bags and her paperwork stuffed in there. And she didn't believe, like, you're going to meet from 2 to 3. She just met and met and met. And so I realized I had to, and I was beginning to buy in. And people at the university were saying, that's Janice just being Janice. She's eccentric. And then I'll never forget one of my very close colleagues, who was also a vice president, is a former nun. And we used to have wonderful lunch conversations. And I called her my truth teller. You know, we would tell each other the absolute truth. And she met with Dr. Mendelsohn and said, Jim, I think you should spend more time with her. And guess what? I started to spend more time with her. The key was Janice would eat, and she lived a very modest lifestyle. She lived 20 years in the same apartment. She drove a Toyota Corolla. You would never know, and she would go to diners. And so on Saturday night, she loved going to a diner called Jim's Restaurant. And we started having dinners on Saturday night. It wasn't rushed. It helped. My wife, Andrea, came along, and she took an instant liking to Andrea. And by the way, I recommend very strongly that fundraisers engage their spouses and significant others in growing a friendship, because I always knew when a donor asked me, how's your wife doing? They bit the hook.
Yeah.
You know, you're taking it beyond.
And you humanize yourself. It
Right.
shows that you're beyond just going for the cash grab, that you
Right.
actually have a relationship.
Right, a friendship.
Yeah,
friendship.
a friendship. There you go.
And so something we learned that we begun to have serious meetings without Janice present. She had some longtime legal representatives, and myself and the chairman of the board would meet with them. And her love was folk dance all her life. She served actually in Vietnam, and she organized folk dances on the roof of a building in Saigon. And her logic was, when you have the hand of a dance partner in your right hand and a hand in your left hand, guess what? You can't hold a gun. So she gave us $2.2 million with 3 components. One component was to take care of the next 5 years of staffing a folk life culture center, and then to build an endowment, and then gave us $750,000, which was unrestricted, which became huge because we were having some enrollment challenges at Our Lady Lake then. and that was used to create sports teams, which did played a big role in turning enrollment around.
I have to ask you, after you received your $1 million gift, and this was a $2.2 million gift.
And then the difference was there, and I was the primary cultivation, of interest.
Do you push yourself to, okay, I got a 2.2, now I want to try to get a 4 million, or is every gift a unique gift in and of itself, and you're just very thankful and gracious that happens? Or do you, as someone that's been in that advancement role, is that something that you are competitive about, I guess, is a lack of a better term?
Absolutely competitive, because there are a lot of big gifts. But remember, it has to do with everyone's capacity. Mm-hmm. I have received many $25,000 gifts that someone probably was stretching their comfort and capacity over a person that was giving $1 million of gifts. Yeah. Okay. The next story, I moved from Our Lady of the Lake to run the foundation for our community college system. And when I stepped in, the system was opening up a remote facility in Kerrville, Texas, which was about 60 miles west of San Antonio. And there had been long-going discussions with a big businessman who was the chairman of the local bank named Neil Griffin. And for some reason, they couldn't bring to closure the terms of the agreement. Now, I've never been afraid of writing things, and so I would pack up my laptop and I would take, a draft, and we would hammer out the agreement. It took, a couple of months, and we reached agreement, and we got $1 million for an endowed scholarship from Mr. Griffin. And then I had a chance to meet with him a lot more personally. We introduced the recipients of the scholarship, and that was just great chemistry when you bring together donors and scholarship recipients. And he called me one day. He said, "Jim, I got $2.5 million. That's part of my estate planning, and you're going to get it." First thing, I didn't want to jump out of my seat, but I want to know how to use it. Guess what? It's not that easy sometimes to determine, a shared vision of how to use a very generous amount of money. First of all, he wanted to put more money in the endowed scholarship. The truth was, we could hardly find recipients that would meet the qualifications of that endowed scholarship. So we worked with them, and that happens a lot. We worked with him to loosen up the restrictions. And then we developed some other components. So there's a very robust medical and nursing community in Kerrville. So we built a facility with some of that money. And then he realized the power of discretionary money, and he left a significant amount in an endowment to be used when and where needed most by the director of the Kerrville Center.
Does the willingness of a big donor, a big gift donor, is that willingness often associated with their ability to have some say-so on how that money is spent?
Absolutely. I think to a fault, sometimes we in the business have not articulated, particularly like in scholarships. I've had where they'll give us a generous amount, $25,000, but they will specify criteria. They have to be in this major. They have to be from this county. They have to write this type of essay. And the trouble is, each time they add a restriction, they decrease the size of applicants, okay? When I was at Alamo Colleges, we had 65,000 students. It's now up to 80,000 students.
Wow.
And sometimes when you get, we call it the one green eye, the one blue eye recipient, they're very, very, and I actually had a scholarship. I used to pick on this a lot. You had to be a boxer. We had 65,000 students. We were lucky to find one boxer.
What if you owned a boxer, like a dog? Would that?
No, sorry, that don't work. Well, so I think we have to articulate, we have to align their visions. And the final donor is an absolute force of nature. His name is Harvey Najam, and he has donated probably between his personal and foundation about $200 to $250 million. He has his name on 66 facilities in the San Antonio region. And he means a lot to me because he was the first person when I decided to become a consultant that I met with. And he was there. He has spoken in 5 of my live or virtual events.
I came to the one you did
Yeah.
over on the northwest side
Yeah.
at, I'm trying to remember the name of the venue.
We filled it up, 150
Filled it up.
people.
It was packed.
Yeah, they came to hear Harvey. I'd like to say they came to hear me, but they came to hear Harvey. But the point is, sometimes it's not what you do, but it's how you leverage the friendships of the people who work with you and who are on your board. In this case, in Harvey, I had a major gift officer named Deborah Martin, one of the best hires I ever made, who had developed a friendship with her. I'd be meeting with her, and the cell phone would ring. Oh, goes, hi, Harvey. I couldn't get close to Harvey. And I let her develop a proposal. He hadn't given to higher ed at that time. And we carved out a $1 million scholarship with $1 million going to the community colleges and then $1 million going to the four-year institutions. So students who are at risk in low-income areas could achieve 4-year degrees in high-demand disciplines.
Well, those are wonderful stories, and they're very diverse in how you interacted with them, what your involvement was, and it just goes to show that those opportunities are out there. And that leads me to the next question for you, which is it possible for smaller or mid-sized nonprofits to aspire to achieve that $1 million gift?
The short answer is absolutely. In fact, in some cases, the smaller to mid-sized nonprofit actually enjoys some advantages because it's a lot more intimate. You can make a gift of $25,000 to $50,000 to a small nonprofit, and remember, the vast majority, over 90% of nonprofits have budgets under $1 million a year. So if they make a gift like $25,000 to $50,000, they're a hero. Okay? Probably, and God bless them, but the Ivy League institutions can't even keep up with how many $1 million donors they have. And so they become, and if you can give $1 million, I like to say there only can be one first $1 million gift. And I mean,
you remember yours down to the minute.
Yeah, and I remember down to the minute. But for the donor and the institution, it's going to be epic. That friendship, their name is going to be remembered forever.
Yeah, as we start to wind down this week's show, I just want to ask you, what can you do to reassure people that whether they're looking for their first or their next $1 million gift, what are some advice you can give to them?
Well, I think the first is you have to believe, and not like a religious faith, but you have to believe in the nobility of your cause, of your nonprofit. You have to believe in your own worthiness. You have to believe in the worthiness of the people you work with. And finally, you have to believe in the generosity of the donor pool, that we are filled, not just people who make $1 million gifts, but I said there are a lot of people. Usually people are just looking for wealth. I have found that passion will influence the size of the gift more than capacity. They'll overgive their financial comfort if they really, really believe in it. So you have to believe in the goodness of the donors. And I like to say that there are a lot of people out there that bring fidelity to the meaning of Abraham Lincoln's better nature of our angels. And there's wealth out there. we have 25 million millionaires. We have 1,000 billionaires. And a lot of these people, you wouldn't know it, particularly the millionaires. You might know it at the billionaire. They live very modest lifestyles, and you shouldn't rush like the four folks I work with. You wouldn't. I'll tell like Mr. Griffin, okay? And he had made gifts of $10 and $25 million. So I would meet with him at the Kerrville Center. I'll never forget at one meeting. We met, and then I walked him out to his car. He had brought a yellow legal pad with him. And he said, Jim, we got to go back. I left my legal pad. Guess what? There was one sheet of paper on it. People like that don't waste money.
Yeah.
When Andrea and I took Harvey Najum out to lunch, we went to a local Mexican restaurant, and there were some leftovers. Guess the one who asked to have a doggy bag. They don't waste.
Yeah.
And they're out there. But again, you got to believe it. The biggest thing I see, you got to believe it's possible. And that's where it all starts. And if you back that up by working hard and working smart, your first and next $1 million gift can and does happen every day.
And they're just people just like us.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, this has been a wonderful episode. And as we're starting to wind down, Jim, I just wonder if there's anything you would like to add before we leave this week's episode.
Well, first of all, I want to express our gratitude to TVSA, the Public Access Station for San Antonio, and in particular to Leon Burns, who's the senior video producer, for making this broadcast possible, and also to our learning community audience that really inspires Andrea and me every day. And these are professional and volunteer nonprofit leaders from all across the country. And they all believe very, very deeply in their various causes, which I like to say touch, improve, and save more lives, especially help those who are struggling. And we're proud to announce we've been doing some homework, and we've made some improvements to what our virtual communication approach is. And beginning on February 5th, we are introducing something called the Fundraising, Friendship, and Fun virtual broadcast for our learning community. And it's not by accident, the 3 F's, fundraising, friendship, and fun. Because I got to tell you, I think those are the 3 pillars of good works. And we really look forward, there'll be a new format and new excitement and energy. We look forward to your engagement in these. And John, I'd like to thank you. You have been our tour guide as we have pivoted to the virtual world. And as I said, I've been doing this for 7 years. And I can't wait for the next 7 years.
Well, I think it's going to be exciting, the new engaging format that you're creating and the ability to have an interactive community in real time, even though they may be hundreds or thousands of miles apart. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching.